Sri Sukadeva Goswami continued. When the king of the elephants was describing the supreme authority, without mentioning any particular person, he did not invoke the demigods, headed by Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, Indra, and Chandra. Thus, none of them approached him. However, because Lord Hari is the super soul, Purushottama, the personality of Godhead, he appeared before Gajendra. Purport. From the description of Gajendra, he apparently was aiming at supreme authority, although he did not know who the supreme authority is. He conjectured there is a supreme authority who is above everything. Under the circumstances, the Lord's various expansions, such as Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, Chandra, and Indra, all thought, quote, Gajendra is not asking our help. He is asking the help of the Supreme, who is above all of us. End of quote. As Gajendra has described, the Supreme Lord has various parts and parcels, including the demigods, human beings, and animals, all covered by separate forms. Although the demigods are in charge of maintaining different aspects of the universe, Gajendra thought that they were unable to rescue him. Harim Vina Naiva Shritim Taranti. No one can rescue anyone from the dangers of birth, death, old age, and disease. It is only the Supreme Personality of Godhead who can rescue one from the dangers of material existence. Therefore, an intelligent person, to get free from the dangerous existence and approaches the Supreme Personality of Godhead, not any demigod, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 7.20. Karmas Tarshita Jana Pra Dayante Nia Devata. Those who are unintelligent approach the various demigods for temporary material benefits. Actually, however, these demigods cannot rescue the living entity from the dangers of material existence. Like other living entities, the demigods are merely external parts of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Transcendental. As stated in the Vedic mantras, Sa Atma Angani Anya Devata. Within the body is the Atma, the soul, whereas the various parts of the body, like the hands and legs, are external. Similarly, the Atma of the entire cosmic manifestation is Narayana. Lord Vishnu, and all the demigods, human beings, and other living entities are parts of his body. It may also be concluded that since a tree lives on the strength of its roots, and when the root is nourished with water, all the parts of the tree are nourished. One should worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the original root of everything. Although the Supreme Personality of Godhead is very difficult to approach, he is very near to us because he lives within our hearts. As soon as the Lord understands that one is seeking his favor by fully surrendering, naturally, he immediately takes action. Therefore, although the demigods did not come to the aid of Gajendra, the Supreme Personality of Godhead immediately appeared before him because of his fervent prayer. This does not mean that the demigods were angry with Gajendra, for actually, when Lord Vishnu is worshipped, all the other demigods are also worshipped. Yasmin to stay jagat to stam. If the Supreme Personality of Godhead is satisfied, everyone is satisfied. Yata taror mula nisay chanena. Chityanti tat skanda ujo vasakaha. Pranopa harach cha yatendriyanam tataiva sarva haranam achutejya. As pouring water on the root of a tree energizes the trunk, branches, twigs, and everything else, and supplying food to the stomach enlivens the senses and limbs of the body, so simply worshiping the Supreme Personality of Godhead through devotional service automatically satisfies the demigods, who are parts of that Supreme Personality. Bhagavatam 4.31.14. When the Supreme Personality of Godhead is worshipped, all the demigods are satisfied. Text 31. After understanding the awkward condition of Gajendra, who had offered his prayers, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, who lives everywhere, appeared with the demigods, who were offering prayers to him. Carrying his disc and other weapons, he appeared there on the back of his carrier, Garuda, with great speed, according to his desire. Thus, he appeared before Gajendra. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Vishwanatha Chakravarti Thakura specifically hints that since Gajendra was in such a difficult position and was praying for the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the demigods, who could have immediately gone to his rescue, hesitated to go there. Since they considered Gajendra's prayer to be directed toward the Lord, they felt offended, and this in itself was offensive. Consequently, when the Lord went there, they went and offered prayers to the Lord so that their offense might be excused. Okay, interesting. Text 32. Gajendra had been forcefully captured by the crocodile in the water and was feeling acute pain. But when he saw that Narayana wielding his disc was coming in the sky on the back of Garuda, he immediately took a lotus flower in his trunk, and with great difficulty, due to his painful condition, he uttered the following words: "O my Lord, Narayana, Master of the universe, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you." Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The king of the elephants was so eager to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead that when he saw the Lord coming in the sky with great pain and in a feeble voice, he offered respect to the Lord. A devotee does not consider a dangerous position to be dangerous, for in such a dangerous position, he can fervently pray to the Lord in great ecstasy. Thus, a devotee regards danger as a good opportunity. Tatenu kampam susamikshamana. When a devotee is in great danger, he sees that danger to be the great mercy of the Lord, because it is an opportunity to think of the Lord very sincerely and with diverted attention. Tete kampam susamiksamano punjana eva nikritam vipakam. Srimad Bhagavatam 10.14.8. He does not accuse the Supreme Personality of Godhead for having let his devotee fall into such a dangerous condition. Rather, he considers that the dangerous condition to be due to his past misdeeds, and takes it as an opportunity to pray to the Lord and offer thanks for having been given such an opportunity. When a devotee lives in this way, his salvation, his going back home, back to Godhead, is guaranteed. We can see this to be true from the example of Gajendra, who anxiously prayed to the Lord and thus received an immediate chance to return home back to Godhead. Text 33. Thereafter, seeing Gajendra in such an aggrieved position, the unborn Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, immediately got down from the back of Garuda by his causeless mercy and pulled the king of the elephants along with the crocodile out of the water. Then, in the presence of all the demigods who were looking on, the Lord severed the crocodile's mouth from its body with his disc. In this way, he saved Gajendra, the king of the elephants. Haribol. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 8th canto, 3rd chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Gajendra's Prayers of Surrender. Wow. Okay, so now we're going to chapter 4. Gajendra returns to the spiritual world. This 4th chapter describes the previous birth of Gajendra and the crocodile. It tells how the crocodile became Gandharva, and how Gajendra became an associate of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There was a king on the Gandharva planet whose name was Hu. Once, this king Hu was enjoying with women in the water, and while enjoying, he pulled the leg of Devala Rishi, who was also taking a bath in the water. Upon this, the sage became very angry and immediately cursed him to become a crocodile. Okay, now we know some history now. King Huhu was very sorry when cursed in that way, and he begged pardon from the sage, who, in compassion, gave him the benediction that he would be freed when Gajendra was delivered by the personality of Godhead. Thus, the crocodile was delivered when killed by Narayana. When Gajendra, by the mercy of the Lord, became one of the Lord's associates in Vaikuntha, he got four hands. This achievement is called Sarupya Mukti, or the liberation of receiving a spiritual body exactly like that of Narayana. Yeah, Narayana has four hands. Gajendra, in his previous birth, had been a great devotee of Lord Vishnu. His name was Indradumna, and he was the king of the Tamila country. Following the Vedic principles, this king retired from family life and constructed a small cottage in the Malaya Chela hills, where he always worshiped the Supreme Personality of God in silence. Agastya Rishi, along with many disciples, once approached King Indradumna, uh, King Indradumna's ashrama, but because the king was meditating on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he could not receive Agastya Rishi properly. Thus, the Rishi became very angry and cursed the king to become a dull elephant. In accordance with this curse, the king was born as an elephant, and he forgot all about his previous activities in devotional service. Nonetheless, in his birth as an elephant, when he was dangerously attacked by the crocodile, he remembered the past life in devotional service and remembered a prayer he had learned in that life. Because of this prayer, he again received the mercy of the Lord. Thus, he was immediately delivered, and he became one of the Lord's four-handed associates. Sukadeva Goswami ends this chapter by describing the good fortune of the elephant. Sukadeva Goswami says that by hearing the narration of Gajendra's deliverance, one can also get the opportunity to be delivered. Sukadeva Goswami vividly describes this, and thus the chapter ends. Okay, now we go to text number 1. Shri Sukha Uvacha Tada Devarsi Gandhavra Ramesh Sana Puro Gama Mumuchu Kusuma Saram Samsanta Karmata Dare. Sri Sukadeva Goswami said, when the Lord delivered Gajendra, king of the elephants, all the demigods, sages, and Gandharvas, headed by Brahma and Shiva, praised his activity of the personality of Godhead and showered flowers upon both the Lord and Gajendra. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. It is evident from this chapter that great sages like Devala Rishi, Narada Muni, and Agastya Muni will sometimes curse someone. The curse of such a personality, however, is in fact a benediction. Both the crocodile, who had been a Gandharva in his previous life, and Gajendra, who had been a king named Indradyumna, were cursed, but both of them benefited. Indradyumna, in his birth as an elephant, attained salvation and became a personal associate of the Lord in Vaikuntha. And the crocodile regained his status as a Gandharva. We find evidence in many places that the curse of a great saint or devotee is not a curse, but a benediction. Haribol. Text number 2. There was a beating of kettle drums in the heavenly planets. The inhabitants of Gandharva Loka began to dance and sing, while great sages and the inhabitants of Charana Loka and Siddhaloka offered prayers to the Supreme Personality, Purushottama. Text 3 and 4. The best of the Gandharvas, King Huhu, having been cursed by Devala Muni, had become a crocodile. Now, having been delivered by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he assumed a very beautiful form as a Gandharva. Understanding by whose mercy this had happened, he immediately offered his respectful obeisances with his head and began chanting prayers just suitable for the transcendental Lord, the Supreme Eternal, who is worshipped by the choicest verses. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The story of how the Gandharva had become a crocodile will be described later. The curse by which the Gandharva took his position was actually a blessing, not a curse. One should not be displeased when a saintly person curses someone, for his curse indirectly is a blessing. The Gandharva had the mentality of an inhabitant of the celestial planetary system, and for him to become an associate of the Supreme Lord would have taken millions of long years. However, because he was cursed by Devala Rishi, he became a crocodile, and in only one life was fortunate enough to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead face to face and be promoted to the spiritual world to become one of the Lord's associates. Similarly, Gajendra was also delivered by the Supreme Personality of Godhead when he was freed from the curse of Agastya Muni. Haribol. Text 5. Having been favored by the causeless mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and having regained his original form, King Huhu circumambulated the Lord and offered his obeisances. Then, in the presence of all the demigods headed by Brahma, he returned to Gandharva. He had been freed from all sinful reactions. Oh, that's good. Text number 6. Because Gajendra, king of the elephants, had been touched directly by the hands of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he was immediately freed from all material ignorance and bondage. Thus, he received the salvation of Swarupa Mukti, in which he achieved the same bodily features as the Lord, being dressed in yellow garments and possessing 4 hands. Purport. If one is favored by the Supreme Personality of Godhead by having his gross body touched by the Lord. His body turns into a spiritual body. And he can go back home, back to Godhead. Gajendra assumed a spiritual body when his body was touched by the Lord. Similarly, Dhruva Maharaja assumed his spiritual body in this way. Archana Padati daily worship, Archana Padati, daily worship of the deity provides an opportunity to touch the body of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and thus enables one to be fortunate enough to get a spiritual body and go back to Godhead. Okay, so let me read that again because that is what we're doing. Archana Padati, daily worship of the deity, provides daily worship of the deity provides an opportunity to touch the body of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and thus it enables one to be fortunate enough to get a spiritual body and go back to Godhead, not only by touching the body of the Supreme Lord, but simply by hearing about his pastimes, chanting his glories, touching his feet, and offering worship. In other words, by serving the Lord somehow or other, one is purified of material contamination. This is the result of touching the Supreme Lord. One who is a pure devotee, Harivilas Sunyam, who acts according to the Shastra, the words of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, certainly becomes purified. Like Gajendra, he assumes a spiritual body and returns home back to Godhead. Yeah, so we're very blessed, not only by touching the body of the Supreme Lord, but simply by hearing about his pastime, chanting his glories, touching his feet, and offering worship. In other words, by serving the Lord somehow or other, one is purified of material contamination. This is the result of touching the Supreme Lord. One who is a pure devotee, Harivilas, who acts according to the Shastra and the words of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, certainly becomes purified. Like Gajendra, he assumes a spiritual body and returns home back to Godhead. Text number 7. This Gajendra had formerly been a Vaishnava and the king of the country known as Pandya, which is in the province of Dravida, South India. In his previous life, he was known as Indradumna Maharaj. Text number 8. Indradumna Maharaja retired from family life and went to the Malaya hills, where he had a small cottage for his ashram. He wore matted locks on his head and always engaged in austerities. Once, while observing a vow of silence, he was fully engaged in the worship of the Lord and absorbed in the ecstasy of love of Godhead. Text number 9. While Indradumna Maharaj was engaged in ecstatic meditation, worshiping the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the great sage Agastya Muni arrived there, surrounded by his disciples. When the Muni saw that Maharaj Indradumna, who was sitting in a secluded place, remained silent and did not follow the etiquette of offering him a reception, he was very angry. Text number 10. Augusta Muni then spoke this curse against the king. This king, Indradumna, is not at all gentle. Being low and uneducated, he has insulted a Brahmana. May he therefore enter the region of darkness and receive the dull, dumb body of an elephant. That's not very nice. Purport. An elephant is very strong. It has a very big body and can work very hard and eat a large quantity of food. But its intelligence is not at all commensurate with its size and strength. Thus, in spite of so much bodily strength, the elephant works as a menial servant for a human body. Agastya Muni thought it wise to curse the king to become an elephant because the powerful king did not receive Agastya Muni as one is obliged to receive a Brahmana. Yet, although Agastya Muni cursed Maharaja Indradumna to become an elephant, the curse was indirectly a benediction. For by undergoing one life as an elephant, Indradumna Maharaj ended the reaction for all the sins of his previous life. Immediately after the expiry of the elephant's life, he was promoted to Vaikuntha Loka to become a personal associate of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayana, in a body exactly like that of the Lord. This is called Sarupya Mukti. Sarupya Mukti. Text 11 and 12. Sukadeva Goswami continued, my dear king, after Agastya Muni had thus cursed King Indradumna, the Muni left that place along with his disciples. Since the king was a devotee, he accepted Agastya Muni's curse as welcome because it was the desire of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, although in his next life he got the body of an elephant, because of devotional service, he remembered how to worship and offer prayers to the Lord. This is the unique purport. This is the unique position of a devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Although the king was cursed, he welcomed the curse because a devotee is always aware that nothing can happen without the desire of the Supreme Lord. Although the king was not at all at fault, Agastya Muni cursed him, and when this happened, the king considered it to be due to his past misdeeds. Tatenu kampam to samikshamana. Bhagavatam 10.14.8. This is a practical example of how a devotee thinks. He regards any reverses in life as blessings of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Well, that's a wonderful statement. This is a practical example of how a devotee thinks. He regards any reverses in life as blessings of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, instead of being agitated by such reverses, he continues his activities of devotional service, and Krishna takes care of him and enables him to be promoted to the spiritual world. Back to Godhead. If a devotee has to suffer the reactions of his past misdeeds, the Supreme Lord arranges for him to be given only a token of these reactions. and very soon he is freed from all reactions of material contamination. One should therefore adhere to devotional service, and the Lord Himself will very soon see to one's promotion to the spiritual world. A devotee should not be disturbed by unfortunate circumstances, but must continue his regular program, depending on the Lord for everything. The word upadaryan, considering, is very significant in this verse. This word indicates that a devotee knows what is what. He understands what is happening in material conditional life. Text 13. Upon delivering the king of the elephants from the clutches of the crocodile and from material existence, which resembles a crocodile, the Lord awarded him the status of Sarupya Mukti. In the presence of the Gandharvas, the Siddhas, and other demigods who were praising the Lord for his wonderful transcendental activities, the Lord, sitting on the back of his carrier Kabuta, returned to his all wonderful abode and took Gajendra with him. Purport. In this verse, the word vimoksha is significant. For a devotee, moksha or mukti, salvation, means getting the position of the Lord's associate. The impersonalists are satisfied to get the liberation of merging in the Brahman effulgence. But for a devotee, mukti, liberation, means not to merge in the effulgence of the Lord, but to be directly promoted to the Vaikuntha planets and to become an associate of the Lord. In this regard, there is a relevant verse in Srimad Bhagavatam 10.14.8, Tatenukam pam susamikshimano punjana evat makritam vipakam prit vat vapurbir vidadan namaste jivetu yo mukti pade sadayabak. One who seeks your compassion and thus tolerates all kinds of adverse conditions due to the karma of his past deeds, who engages always in your devotional service with his mind, words, and body, and who always offers obeisances unto you, is certainly a bona fide candidate for liberation. End of quote. A devotee who tolerates everything in this material world and patiently executes his devotional service can become Mukti Pade Sadayabhak, a bona fide candidate for liberation. The word Dayabhak refers to a hereditary right to the Lord's mercy. A devotee must simply engage in devotional service, not caring about material situations. Then he automatically becomes a rightful candidate for promotion to the Vaikuntha Loka. The devotee who renders unalloyed service to the Lord gets the right to be promoted to Vaikuntha Loka, just as a son inherits the property of his father. When a devotee gets liberation, he becomes free from material contamination and engages as a servant of the Lord. This is explained in Srimad Bhagavatam 2.10.6, Muktir Hitvanyata Rupam Swarupena Vivastati. The word Swarupa refers to Swarupa Mukti, going back home, back to Godhead, and remaining the Lord's external associate. Having regained a spiritual body exactly resembling that of the Lord, with four hands holding the Sankha Chakrogada Padma. The difference between the mukti of the impersonalist and that of the devotee is that the devotee is immediately appointed an eternal servant of the Lord, whereas the impersonalist, although merging in the effulgence of the Brahmajyoti, is still insecure and therefore generally falls again to this material world. Aruya Krichena Param Padam Tata Patanti Adho Nadrita Yusmad Angraya. Bhagavatam 10.2.32. Although the impersonalist rises to the Brahman effulgence and enters into the effulgence, he has no engagement in the service of the Lord, and therefore he is again attracted to materialistic philanthropic activities. Thus, he comes down to open hospitals and educational institutions, feed poor men, and perform similar materialistic activities, which the impersonalist thinkers are more precious than serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Anadrita Yusmad Angraya, the impersonalists do not think that the service of the Lord is more valuable than serving the poor man or starting a school or hospital. Although they say Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya, Brahman is real and the material world is false, they are nonetheless very eager to serve the false material world and neglect the service of the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Text 14. My dear King Parikshit, I have now described the wonderful power of Krishna as displayed when the Lord delivered the king of the elephants. O best of the Kuru dynasty, those who hear this narration become fit to be promoted to the higher planetary system. Simply because of hearing this narration, they gain a reputation as devotees. They are unaffected by the contamination of Kali Yuga, and they never see bad dreams. Oh boy, that's good. Text 15. Therefore, after getting up from bed in the morning, those who desire their own welfare, especially the Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and in particular the Brahmana Vaishnavas, should chant this narration as it is, without deviation to counteract the troubles of bad dreams. Purport. Every verse in the Vedic literature, especially in the Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita, is a Vedic mantra. Hear the words hear the words Yatanuk Kirtayanti are used to recommend that this literature be presented as it is. Unscrupulous persons, however, deviate from the actual narration and interpret the text in their own way with grammatical jugglery. Such deviations are to be avoided. This is a Vedic injunction supported by Sukadeva Goswami, one of the Mahajanas or authorities. He says, Yatana Kirtayanti, one should recite the mantra as it is, without deviation, for then one will be eligible to rise to the platform of all good fortune. Sukadeva Goswami especially recommends that those who are brahmanas, suchaya, recite all these mantras after rising from bed in the morning. Because of sinful activities, at night we have bad dreams, which are very troublesome. Indeed, Maharaj Yudhishthira was obliged to see hell because because of a slight deviation from devotional service to the Lord. Therefore, to swapna, bad dreams occur because of sinful activities. A devotee sometimes accepts a sinful person as his disciple. And to counteract the sinful reactions he accepts from the disciple, he has to see a bad dream. Nonetheless, the spiritual master is so kind that in spite of having bad dreams due to the sinful disciple, he accepts his troublesome business for the deliverance of the victims of Kali Yuga. After initiation, therefore, a disciple should be extremely careful not to commit again any sinful act that might cause difficulties for himself and the spiritual master. Before the deity, before the fire, before the spiritual master, and before the Vaishnavas, the honest disciple promises to refrain from all sinful activity. Therefore, he must again commit sinful acts and thus create a troublesome situation. I'm sorry. Therefore, he must not again commit sinful acts and thus create a troublesome situation. Text 16. O best of the Kuru dynasty, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the super soul of everyone, being thus pleased, addressed Gajendra in the presence of everyone there. He spoke the following blessings. Text 17 to 24. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, free from all sinful reactions are those who rise from bed at the end of night, early in the morning, and fully concentrate their minds with great attention upon my form, your form, this lake, this mountain, the caves, the gardens, the cane plants, the bamboo plants, the celestial trees, the residential quarters of me, Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva, the three peaks of Trikuta Mountain, made of gold, silver, and iron. My very pleasing abode, the ocean of milk. The white is the white island, Swetadvipa, which is always brilliant with spiritual rays. My mark of Srivatsa, the Kostuba gem, my Vajayanti garment, my club, Komodaki, my Sudarsana disc, and Panchajanya conch-shell, my bearer Garuda, the king of the birds, my bed Sheshanaga, my expansion of energy, the goddess of fortune, Lord Brahma, Narada Muni, Lord Shiva, Prahlada, my incarnations as Matsya, Kurma, and Varaha, my unlimited, all auspicious activities, which yield piety to he who hears them, the sun, the moon, fire, the mantra Omkara, the absolute truth, the total material energy, the cows and brahmanas, devotional service, the wives of Soma and Kasyapa, who are all daughters of King Daksha, the rivers, Ganges, Saraswati, Nanda, and Yamuna, Kalindi, the elephant Airavata, Dhruva Maharaja, the seven rishis, and the pious human beings. My dear devotee, unto those who rise from bed at the end of night and offer me the prayers offered by you, I give an eternal resonance in the spiritual world at the end of their lives. Well, that's pretty good. Text 26. Sri Sukadeva Goswami continued, after giving this instruction, the Lord, who is known as Rishikesha, bugled with his Panchajanya conch shell in this way, pleasing all the demigods headed by Lord Brahma. Then he mounted the back of his carrier, Garuda. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 8th canto, 4th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Gajendra Returns to the Spiritual World. Wow, that's exactly the end. It's 7:30 right now. Perfect. Okay, so that's the end. Are there any questions or comments? Any questions or comments? Okay, so then tomorrow we'll listen to chapter 5, the demigods appeal to the Lord for protection. Haribol. All glory to Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Krishna Krishna, Hare
Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj.
Yes.
Please accept my humble obeisances or glories to Srila Prabhupada. Guru Maharaj, I have this question. When you were reading, then it just struck to my mind. When devotees of the stator of Indratumna Maharaj got the body of Gajendra, so when we are interacting in our lives, so what is like, how can we guarantee that at this, like, we can go back to Godhead in this lifetime? How can we try that? How can we aspire for that?
How can we avoid having the body of, let's say, a non-human body? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and then actually go
I'm
back.
not worried. I'm not worried about non-human body. I want to really want to figure out how to ensure that 100% we can go back to Godhead.
Well, if you do not disobey the orders of the spiritual master, and the spiritual master is pleased with your behavior, you go back to Godhead. Everything will depend on how you act in the spiritually with the spiritual master. If you are fully surrendered to the Krishna and the Guru, you go back to Godhead.
Thank you so much, Guru.
You should be very careful with the spiritual master and not do anything whimsical or anything that's insulting or anything like that of the spiritual master. So, by the mercy of the spiritual master, one can go back to Godhead. Hare Krishna. The spiritual master is the he's the representative of Krishna. So if you behave nicely with the spiritual master, you're blessed and you go back to Godhead. Okay, all glories.
to Srila Prabhupada ki